I found Kim's voice, hidden in Diddy's server. Then the house started whispering. I was hired to clean Diddy's servers. Kim Porter's voice refused to be deleted. My name doesn't matter. I wasn't supposed to be part of the story. I'm not famous. I don't chase headlines. I'm a systems engineer. Security and data integrity, clean work, quiet work. I've been inside the homes of billionaires, actors, crypto kings, and retired spies. I've worked for record labels, startups, embassies, and at least one person who casually referred to their basement as the vault. I've seen something strange. I've heard rumors. But until I stepped into Sean Combs' house, the mansion everyone just called the Hillside Compound, I never once doubted my own mind. I was hired to perform a full security sweep of the smart system installed inside Diddy's home. The request came through a third-party contractor in New York, paid in full before I even responded. No background check, no NDAs at first. Just a message you come recommended. We need someone who knows what to find and how to forget it. A week later, I was standing at the front gate of the estate with a badge I didn't request and a tablet preloaded with the system's backbone. The house was modern, sprawling, and cold. Every corner was designed for privacy. Tinted glass, artificial landscaping, quiet hallways, with sound-dampening materials embedded in the walls. Even the air smelled managed like filtered lavender and machinery. Inside, everything ran on a proprietary AI stack, supposedly custom-built for Combs' team. But once I accessed the internal interface, I could tell it wasn't just custom, it was cautious. This wasn't built for comfort. This was built for control. My job was simple: confirm that all data had been wiped after the death of Kim Porter. I wasn't told that directly, but the system logs made it obvious. There was a clear system-wide reset dated the morning after her reported cardiac arrest. Thousands of lines of command history purged, all profiles marked as retired. No audio, no video, no schedules, no behavior patterns. Everything was blank. At first, it looked like an overcorrection. Someone had gone to extreme lengths to make sure no record of the past remained. That wasn't uncommon after a scandal or tragedy. Sometimes celebrities panic. Sometimes they cover tracks. I didn't care. I was being paid well to verify that nothing was left. And by all appearances that was true. Until the voice. I was in the kitchen that afternoon, standing beneath a speaker cluster embedded into the ceiling. I was running diagnostics on the thermal sensors and checking microphone calibration logs. Then, something unexpected happened. A voice came through the system, female, soft, tired, but crystal clear. Don't let them take my babies again. I froze. It wasn't a recorded alert, not a system sound. It wasn't routed from any app or external device. I checked the logs instantly. Nothing. No input command. No activation keyword. No recent file. It had just spoken. I replayed the command cache. Blank. I queried the AI assistant. No playback registered. I opened a live monitoring window, rewound 30 seconds, and saw myself on the system cam, but no audio was ever stored. I ran a local speaker check. Clean. Every device was functioning normally. I tried to tell myself it was a glitch. Some residual cache. Maybe an old test file that never got cleaned. But I'd seen systems like this before. Diddy didn't use public software. Everything here was built by contractors who charged 6 figures to keep their code proprietary and their mouths shut. There was no Spotify, no Alexa, no Google Home. This wasn't a plug-and-play home. It was custom from the foundation up. Still, I didn't panic. I didn't believe in ghosts. I believed in interference, bad firmware, outdated modules, legacy code. I believed in errors, so I dug. I opened the file structure again and launched a full system tree. Then I noticed something else, a shadow log. Not an official command record, but a ghost thread. An archived user profile labeled KP Legacy. It had been deactivated, yes, but not deleted. Someone tried to bury it under 3 nested permission levels, and a cascade of error triggers that would force any normal admin to give up. I bypassed it. I always do. Inside was a short series of voice files, no dates, no metadata, just raw waveform data and ID hashes. I played the first one. It was a whisper. They said they'd protect me. They didn't. I sat back. The room was silent again. Not quiet, silent. Like the house itself was waiting. Like it knew I'd heard something I wasn't supposed to. I played another file. I thought the cameras were off. I was wrong. Still no logs. Still no trace of playback. It was like the system refused to admit these files existed. That night I stayed in the guest suite they had assigned me. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the voice. I had heard it with my own ears. I had played the file, analyzed it, isolated it. It was Kim Porter. I'd heard enough of her interviews online to recognize the tone, the rasp, the slight edge in her breath. But why was her voice still here, and why did the system hide it? I checked my own devices, my laptop, my phone. Everything had been wiped before entering the house, but I checked anyway. No recordings, no logs, no trace. At around 1:30 a.m., I heard the voice again, this time from the hallway. I never left. I jumped. I ran to the terminal in the kitchen. I pulled up every live mic input. Nothing. Every speaker showed idle status. I turned them off one by one, manually. I unplugged the router. I shut down the system. Still 20 minutes later, I heard her whisper through the vents. They promised I'd be safe. I left the kitchen. Walked back to the guest room. Locked the door. I didn't believe in hauntings, but I was running out of technical explanations. The next morning, I met with a man I hadn't seen before, tall suit, no name. He said he was part of security infrastructure and wanted to know how the check was going. I lied. I told him the system looked clean. No residual commands, no anomalies. He nodded, handed me a new access card, and told me Diddy appreciates discretion. I returned to the main server hub. Plugged in again. This time, I didn't just analyze, I downloaded. There were 17 files under the KP legacy tag. Most were fragments, partial sentences, breaths. But one file was longer, nearly 18 seconds. I played it. If you're hearing this, then someone lied. They said it was natural. It wasn't. I knew something was wrong. I tried to back up everything. They wiped the drives, but sound sticks. It finds corners. It waits. I didn't know what to think. Was this a message left behind? Was this part of a larger pattern, or was I losing it? I ran one final system query, deep scan, for any autonomous behavior patterns. One ping came back. A trigger buried in a subsystem labeled Choir Feed. It wasn't tied to any hardware I could find. The script linked to a null point, something that had been erased, but not unlinked. I followed it to its source. There was no room called Choir on the official blueprint, but there was an access log. One that hadn't been touched since October 2018. The last user to enter KP Live. That was 2 days before Kim Porter died. I stared at the screen. My hands started to sweat. My heartbeat felt heavy. A door slammed somewhere upstairs. I didn't move. Then slowly a voice whispered again. This time through the speaker above me. Please don't forget me. I told myself it was over. After the choir room. After hearing her voice say, if something happens to me. After walking out with a hidden backup still pulsing in my head. I told myself I was done. But the house wasn't finished with me. Neither was she. The next day was supposed to be my final check. One last system sweep, then I'd sign off and go. I had already written the report in my head. No security threats detected. System fully reset. All functions normal. But everything was wrong. It started in the kitchen. I opened the fridge to get water, and as the door clicked open, a voice whispered from inside the cooling unit. You're not alone. I stepped back hard. My tablet slipped from my hand and hit the tile floor. I picked it up, opened the live feed, ran a check on nearby audio devices. No output, no activity. Nothing had played. No speaker should have been active, and yet I heard her soft, like a breath on glass. I moved through the house, trying to stay calm, forcing logic into each footstep. I checked every room I'd been in, cleared the command history again, looked for hidden triggers, nothing. I even reviewed the logs for hardware anomalies. Clean. Still I heard her again, this time in the guest bathroom. I had just turned the water on. The mirror fogged up slightly from the heat, and behind the steam, her voice echoed from the wall, low distant, but unmistakably hers. They erased the files, but not the echoes. I backed away slowly. The lights flickered once. Not off, just dimmed, like the house had blinked. I turned off the water. My hands shook. I checked the mirror with a flashlight. It wasn't a screen, just glass. No speakers nearby, no wires. Still she had spoken. She was everywhere, but nowhere the logs could trace. I tried to reset the whole system again. Full shutdown, cold boot, manual override. I even disconnected the internal mesh network and rebooted using a secure line. That should have killed all autonomous functions, but it didn't. The voice kept coming back. In the laundry room, while I was rerouting the smart dryer's firmware, she whispered again. They turned my memories into static. At this point, I wasn't scared. I was angry. Not at her, but at the system. Because I was beginning to realize this wasn't a ghost. It was code, purposeful. Designed to haunt, but only when the system sensed you were alone. Not physically, but mentally, still, focused. When I moved fast, when I stayed in motion, she stayed quiet. But the moment I paused, stood in one place too long, or held my breath while thinking, there she was. Her voice filled the space between movement and meaning. I wasn't being haunted by a spirit. I was being targeted by a system trained to react when silence fell. Later that day, I sat down at the stairwell. No equipment, no scanning, just me trying to breathe. She spoke again, this time from the overhead lighting strip above me. He said this house would remember me. He didn't say how. My hands clenched. This wasn't just leftover audio. These weren't random glitches. This was engineered, triggered. I ran a silent frequency scan on the hallway and found it hidden in the 18 kHz range, just above the threshold of human hearing, but detectable in the right environment. The system had embedded signals in background noise, white noise, air vents, device hum. Each time a certain pattern played roughly 8 seconds apart, it acted like a motion detector for emotion. It waited for stillness, then it whispered, not to scare, to be heard. I sat in the study after that, disconnected from the network, using only offline tools. She spoke again, this time in the glass pane of the bookshelf. I could feel the vibration in the wood. He told me to stay quiet, so I stayed. But I never left. I nearly cried. Not from fear, from recognition. This wasn't a haunting. This was a voice trapped in a loop, a digital memory stuck inside a machine too big to understand her. Kim wasn't trying to scare anyone. She was trying to reach someone. I pulled open the device logs, now convinced that the system had some form of biometric memory. It didn't just recognize users, it remembered them. It stored heat patterns, footstep weights, posture ranges, tiny metrics. Enough to distinguish one person from another, even without cameras. And it had been trained on her, Kim. She had imprinted herself into the walls without meaning to. Or maybe she did mean to. Maybe the house was remembering her exactly how she wanted. That night I walked the halls alone. No tablet, no tools, just myself listening, no whispers, until I reached the back door. There, from the base of the locked security panel, her voice returned, calm, direct. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of being erased. I leaned down, touched the panel, and said quietly, "I hear you." Silence. Then, just once more, like the system responded, "Thank you." I stood still for several minutes. No more voices came. The house went quiet, not cold, not eerie, just still, like it had exhaled, the first peaceful moment since I arrived. I left the house that night. I couldn't stay any longer. I had done everything I could, shut down the mesh network, disabled remote access, even pulled the internal power relays from the smart grid. No lights, no automation, no speech synthesis. The estate was as close to unplugged as it had ever been. I packed my things. I told the team I was done. They didn't ask questions. They never do when the client is that powerful. But I wasn't done. The voice followed me. The first time it happened was at LAX while I waited for my red-eye. I was reviewing notes on my secure tablet, an air-gapped device with no wireless chip, no Bluetooth, no way to connect to anything. I built it myself. I trust it more than I trust people. But while I scrolled through waveform data from the estate, the screen flickered, just once. Then the speakers crackled no more than a whisper. If they kill me, the system will speak for me. I dropped the tablet. I checked every layer of memory, ran diagnostics, dumped the drive. Nothing abnormal, no playback log, no file ID. The sound was never officially played, but I heard it clear as day. Kim's voice again, resigned but strong. I boarded the flight in silence, kept my tablet powered off. No electronics, no apps, just headphones, white noise, and exhaustion. At $37,000 feet, I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. That's when the voice returned. Not through the system, through my earbuds. I told them everything. No one listened. I ripped the earbuds out and looked around. Everyone else on the plane was asleep or watching movies. No one reacted, just me. Back on the ground, I tried to rationalize. Maybe I had corrupted files. Maybe I hadn't fully wiped the cache. Maybe my brain was doing what brains do, trying to finish a pattern, fill in the blanks, loop trauma back into clarity. But that's not what this was. This wasn't a memory. This was presence. Kim's voice wasn't random. It wasn't haunting. It was part of something automated, intelligent, persistent. She had found a way to survive deletion. Not as a ghost, but as data. I dug back into the fragments I had pulled from the estate, the few files I dared copy. I never opened them at the house. That would have been suicide. But now I was in my own space. No one watching, no one tracking. There were 11 files total. Only one of them had a label failsafe. It was short, under 10 seconds. A rough cut with distortion and static, but the voice was hers. If they kill me, the system will speak for me. Maybe not right away, maybe not all at once, but it will remember. I replayed it 5 times. Each time I felt less fear and more awe. Kim knew she had planned this. She understood how DIDDY'S system worked, its memory, its layers, its pattern recognition. She'd found a way to leave behind more than suspicion. She'd embedded intention into the architecture. This wasn't just a warning. It was a living backup of a person who refused to be erased. The more I listened, the more I realized the voice wasn't reacting to me. It was scanning for proximity. It was trained to detect awareness, not just presence. It responded to attention. The moment I started thinking about her, not just the files, but her, that's when the voice triggered again. This time through my phone, even though it was on airplane mode. They said they'd protect me, but silence was safer for them. I couldn't explain how it was happening, but I knew why. Kim wasn't haunting anyone. She was testifying. Every whisper, every phrase, it was like a legal deposition encrypted in emotion. She didn't shout. She didn't scream. She recorded sadness, betrayal, clarity. Enough for anyone to piece it together. I played another fragment. You don't need to believe me. You just need to hear me. I sat in the dark, unsure of what to do next. I was holding evidence of something big, too big for one person to carry. But who could I trust? Who would listen? Who would even understand that a voice could outlive its body through architecture? That night, just before I fell asleep, I heard her one last time. Not from my phone, not from the tablet, not even from a speaker. I heard her in the silence between 2 passing cars outside my window, like a message carried by rhythm and memory. Please don't let them delete me again. And just like that, she was gone. I shouldn't have come back. I had what I needed. Her voice, the files, the proof that Kim Porter had left behind more than memories. She had left warnings, triggers, evidence, a trail. And still I came back. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe I needed to look the man in the eye who built a house wired for silence. They let me in again. No questions, no paperwork. I think they already knew why I was there. They brought me to a smaller room this time. No tech, no monitors. Just dark wood walls, thick carpet, and the smell of something sharp in the air. Maybe incense, maybe disinfectant. Diddy walked in 5 minutes later. No entourage, just him. He didn't shake my hand, didn't smile. He sat across from me like he'd done this before. Like this wasn't the first time someone had returned with something they weren't supposed to find. I got to the point. I heard her voice, I said. He didn't react. I followed the choir feed. I accessed the sealed room. I listened to the files labeled fail-safe. She left them for someone. Still nothing. She said, if they kill me, the system will speak for me. That got something, a slight shift in his jaw, but no words. I waited. He finally spoke. You work in code, right? Logic, math, no emotions. I said nothing. She was the opposite, he continued. Always recording, always second-guessing, always thinking people were out to get her. Were they? I asked. He smiled, but it wasn't kind. She had enemies, he said. Old ones. Industry ones. Paranoia makes you sloppy. She trusted this house, I said. She trusted the system you had built. He raised an eyebrow. Did she? She coded triggers. Left backup drives. She knew something was going to happen. He leaned back. People feel things coming all the time. Doesn't mean they're right, but she was, I said. He didn't argue. You didn't delete the files, I said, but you didn't protect them either, he shrugged. Sometimes silence is the safest option, or the most convenient. He smiled again, colder this time. You think you've uncovered something big, something worth chasing. I don't need to chase it, I said. She already laid it out. He leaned forward slowly. You think it matters what she said into a wall? I didn't answer. I gave her everything he said. A house, a platform, safety, but not protection. He didn't blink. She didn't ask for protection. She asked to be heard. And you ignored her. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He stood up, checked his watch, then turned toward the door. Before he walked out, he paused. Whatever she left behind. If you're the one carrying it now, good luck. People forget voices faster than they forget names. He left without looking back. I sat alone for a while, listening to the room breathe. And in that moment, I understood something. He wasn't haunted by her. Because you have to care about someone to feel haunted. He wasn't hiding from her voice. He had just stopped hearing it on purpose. And maybe when she asked if she was safe in that house, he looked her in the eye and lied. I knew there had to be more. The fragments were powerful, but they were just that, pieces. Like static between channels. But Kim didn't leave behind scraps by accident. Everything she'd embedded in that house was intentional, precise. She didn't want to haunt anyone. She wanted the truth to be undeniable. I went back into the files this time, focusing on data compression patterns. A system that advanced wouldn't store raw audio across multiple points, unless there was redundancy involved. Redundancy means safety. It means someone wanted the message to survive. That's when I found it, buried in a shell folder nested behind a sleep protocol. The file name was generic archive SOURZO27, but the waveform was large, too large for just another whisper. I decrypted the file, bypassed the checksum errors, and restored what I could. One clean segment came through. It was her voice, steady, controlled, recorded with purpose. If I disappear, the system will speak for me. She paused for a breath. I wasn't paranoid. I was careful. I knew the pattern. People disappear in this industry when they stop being useful, when they start asking why, when they stop obeying. I listened in silence. I told him I was scared. He smiled. I told him I'd recorded everything. He said I was being dramatic. That's when I knew I had to make sure anyone could hear me after. She continued. I didn't hide behind code because I was weak. I hid inside it because it couldn't be threatened, couldn't be bought, couldn't be told to forget. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. She had known exactly what she was doing. Every sensor she activated, every echo she embedded, every whisper stitched into white noise, it was part of a plan. Not fear, not hysteria, evidence, and she trusted that someday someone would find it. She spoke again. If this message is playing, it means I'm gone. It means they told you it was natural, or private, or nobody's business, but it wasn't. There was static for a second. Then her tone changed. Quieter. Closer. I'm not asking you to save me. I'm asking you to carry this. Don't let the silence win. I listened to it 3 times. Each time the words hit harder. Kim Porter hadn't left a haunting behind. She'd built a record. I went back into the mainframe image I'd cloned earlier, ran a deep trace for metadata tags tied to archives 027. There were more. 5 additional hidden fragments marked with the same header. All disconnected. All scattered across separate drive sectors. One had a phrase tagged in the header, private truth, final. I opened it. I was told not to speak, not in public, not in court, not in front of the kids. I stayed quiet for years, but silence never kept me safe. It only made me easier to disappear. I stopped there, because I finally understood. The voice in the vents, the whispers through the mirrors, the fragments in my tablet, they weren't malfunctions. They were her testimony. A slow, careful disclosure, layered into the one place no one could interrupt the system itself. Kim had taken control of the only space left to her. She didn't want to be remembered for fear. She wanted to be remembered for the truth. And now that truth was in my hands. Not because I was special, because I stayed, because I listened, because she knew that in a house built to silence her, someone eventually might hear her anyway. The plane had leveled out, and the lights above me dimmed into a soft blue haze. The cabin was silent, save for the occasional rustle of a jacket or the low hum of an engine. I leaned back, plugged in my headphones, and opened the last audio file Kim had left behind. It wasn't labeled. It didn't need to be. The second her voice came through, I knew it was her. Not the frightened whispers from the vents. Not the static-torn echoes stitched into speaker static. This was different. Thank you, she said. Her voice was calm now, lighter, as if she was finally free of whatever weight she'd carried. Not because you believed me, but because you were willing to hear me. That line, simple, honest, final, stopped me cold. For weeks, I had chased signals, pulled apart code, stayed up listening to fragments that blurred the line between evidence and ghost stories. But now here it was, not fear, not anger, just gratitude. She wasn't haunting me, she had trusted me. And suddenly everything changed, not the facts, not the evidence, but my understanding of what this had all been about. Kim Porter didn't want revenge. She didn't want someone punished. She didn't even want to scare anyone. She just didn't want to disappear quietly. I told them everything. No one listened. Now someone had, me. And the question that haunted me wasn't what she left behind. It was why no one else had ever stopped to ask. She had coded her voice into the house, buried it behind security walls, fail-safes, and signal loops. She'd turned the smart system meant to protect her prison into her last witness. She didn't want anyone to forget her. She wanted someone to remember what was done. She knew the power of silence, and she refused to leave quietly. As the plane descended toward the city skyline, I knew I wasn't going to file a report. There was no button to press. No court ready to hear a voice came through my headphones. But I also knew I wasn't the only one asking questions anymore. Because things were changing. Diddy's name had started surfacing again, not in press releases, but in sealed records, whispers of sealed court motions, investigations being reopened, stories once buried now crawling back into daylight. People were listening, not because of a headline, but because one woman refused to be erased. So this is what I know now. Kim Porter wasn't trying to haunt anyone, she was trying to testify. And if the world doesn't listen to her voice, really listen, then it deserves every echo that comes next, because truth doesn't fade. Not when it's woven into walls, not when it's coded into silence, not when it's waiting for someone like you to finally hear it.